It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Dr. Neil Schachter. Hi, Dr. Neil. How are you?
Hi, Douglas. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. So,
thank you.
What is your area of expertise? What is your specialty?
So I'm a pulmonary critical care and sleep medicine doctor, and my main focus is on pulmonary medicine at this point.
So that has to do with the heart, I think, yeah?
No, actually, it has to do with the lungs.
Oh, the lungs. Okay.
The heart comes in there, but we mainly deal with what happens to the lungs.
Oh, I see. And you said sleep. Are you an anesthesiologist as well?
No, haven't done that one yet. But we do critical care, which does many of the things that anesthesiologists do.
Okay.
Like have patients on ventilators and deal with respiratory issues.
You must have been, or you must be, very busy with COVID, I suspect. Then, yeah.
It's been a trip here. I mainly at this point see patients that have survived COVID and need follow-up. I also deal with patients who have new COVID and who are being treated at home.
So the severity of COVID just largely depends on the person, basically?
To a great extent, it depends on the age of the person, their comorbidities, that is to say, the diseases they come to the infection with, and also, very importantly, whether they're of normal weight or obese.
Oh, okay. So if one is obese, they have a greater risk of
serious complications.
Serious complications. Okay. Well, that rules me. That includes me, I guess. But I've been lucky enough. I haven't encountered it. So. Well,
you know, we have gradations of obesity, and depending on how far along you are, you have more risk.
Oh, okay. So basically, in simple terms, the fatter you are, the greater the risk.
Pretty much. But we look at BMI, which takes into account how tall you are, your gender, and how much you actually weigh. Okay.
All right. How is the vaccine progressing in New York? I know you said you're in New York City.
Right.
Are there a lot of vaccine areas, stations, places people can go? Is it getting out?
Well, it's definitely spread out now. Initially, we were confined to hospitals when we only had the Pfizer vaccine, which, as you know, has to be refrigerated to very low temperatures and requires special equipment for that. With the Moderna vaccine, that requirement became a lot less, and now with the third vaccine, the J&J vaccine, we will not have those kinds of problems. But moreover, more than that, the rules on who can be vaccinated have loosened, and now we're getting to a much greater fraction of the population here in New York City.
Okay. Have you been vaccinated?
I have. They came to me very early on, and they said, would you like to be vaccinated today? And I thought for about 10 seconds, and I said, yes. And I ran down and I got my first shot.
So, okay, so have you got your second one yet?
And I got my second shot 3 weeks later.
All right. And no side effects?
Virtually no side effects, maybe a little soreness in the arm, but essentially nothing.
Okay. Well, that's good. And which one did you get? The Pfizer or the Moderna one?
I got the Pfizer because I took the vaccine early on. But at this point, I think most people who have been vaccinated have primarily been vaccinated with Pfizer, although there's probably very little difference in terms of the immunity. They both have very similar degrees of protection against serious illness, which is basically what we're looking for.
Well, you've got a book that you're promoting, presumably that's why you're here. The book is called The Good Doctor's Guide to Colds and Flu. And how is this book related to COVID at all, or is it?
Well, this book was originally written about 10 years ago, and it has been updated for every epidemic that we've had, for the flu epidemic, the bird flu, and for the previous coronavirus scares that we had. And so now, just recently, we've written an appendix, or not an appendix, actually a section that deals with all aspects of the coronavirus as far as they are understood at this point. And of course, you realize that this is fast-breaking news. Every day there are new facts and findings, new recommendations. So it's something you have to keep up with. And in order to do that, we have a website, The Good Doctor 1, with a numeral 1.com, where we try to bring our readers up to date with the newest recommendations and findings. The book itself gives the general background on viral diseases, which coronavirus disease is, and with the general ways that we approach it. But as I just mentioned, this picture is changing day by day.
Okay. How are things particularly in New York City now? Are you open, half open, not open at all?
Well, let me say this. Initially when you would would go out in the street, there would be no one on the street. All the major department stores were boarded up, and everybody was locked down. Then it started to loosen up a little bit. People started to come out. The restaurants opened. There was a lull in the infectivity of the disease, and the numbers went down. That was over the summer. But then it came back, and as a result of this comeback, I think people are taking it much more seriously. And I think you can't walk down a street in New York City and see anything below a person's eyes. You'd think everybody was living in Saudi Arabia here.
Okay, so the mask mandate, everybody's wearing masks.
Everybody's wearing masks. I can't say that everybody is practicing social distancing, but everybody is certainly much more aware that this is a real thing. New York accounts for a large proportion of the really sick people and the people who have died from this disease in the United States. And, this has an effect.
Do you think it's just because of the geography of New York, where people are just sort of forced to be, very close to each other because of the density of the population and the subways? I mean, it's almost impossible to social distance on a subway, I would think,
That's very true. And if you look at the buses here in New York City, they're virtually, they used to be packed door to door with people. Now they ride totally empty. People think twice before taking public transportation. But more generally, New York not only had the crowding problem, but it had the problem of being a national and international destination of so many different people. And the disease spread quickly from New York throughout the boroughs, and we became an epicenter of the disease.
I want to hit on a couple of your talking points that your PR person sent to us.
Okay, that's what I'm here for.
Okay. The first one is the 3 supplements that may reduce the risk of COVID. What are those 3 supplements?
Well, we have actually several things that are either suggested or have rolled over from other viral illnesses that we recommend. Vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc are the 3 that I think you're thinking of. They all are, in some respects, able to improve immunity and to limit the multiplication of viruses. That's particularly true of zinc. None of these are FDA approved for this particular recommendation, but they enjoy widespread use, and there's some reason to think that they may be helpful. And think about it. The disease affects millions of people, but the number of severe diseases, depending on your risk factors, can be relatively low. I mean, below the age of 45, 50, relatively mild to moderate disease occurs. Over the age of 50, you're talking about 10 or more % of the people who are affected with this who get really sick. So it's important that we have something that we can give early on to these people. And since the beginning of this pandemic, that's one of the things that we've been looking at. Unfortunately, we don't have a slam dunk product yet that can abort the disease before it really takes off.
So the vaccines that are out there now, that's a preventative vaccine, not a treatment vaccine. Is that correct?
Well, all vaccines are preventative in the sense that they rev up your body's immune system to fight off the disease so it doesn't get to the point where it overwhelms you and leads to the consequences such as a disability or even death. So they don't necessarily prevent you from actually catching the virus, because the virus is in the air, you breathe it in, and it can set up shop in your airway. But with the vaccines, your body reacts quickly, it limits the damage, and prevents you from getting really sick.
So if somebody is already really sick, would the vaccine make them better? Or is it too late at that point?
No. Yes and no.
Yes and no.
That's a very interesting question. You wouldn't want to give somebody the vaccine who is actually sick with the virus. And my own personal recommendation is to wait 3 months after you've recovered. We don't know how long personal immunity lasts, but to give someone the antigens, because basically what we're giving them are parts of the virus to stimulate your body's response to those parts. We don't want the body to be overstimulated, particularly in the early phases of the disease, because we know that that's partly what causes some of the major damage that occurs as a result of the COVID infection.
The 3 symptoms that signal it's time to call 911 immediately. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, well, so we look at the saturation, the saturation of oxygen in the blood. That's a very important factor to follow, and so many people now are familiar with this very simple instrument that people have, which is called a pulse oximeter, and which allows you to measure the amount of oxygen that your blood is carrying. If you don't have that instrument, the other high signs, the other danger signs are progressive shortness of breath, which is sort of a poor person's way of finding out how much oxygen you have in your blood, and also cough. Cough indicates that the virus has spread throughout the airways and is causing irritation and inflammation in the lungs themselves.
So are those early symptoms of COVID, are they pretty universal with people, or do people exhibit different sorts of...
I mean, there are dozens of symptoms that COVID presents with. They can present with GI symptoms, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, loss of appetite. Very characteristic is the loss of the sense of smell and of taste. That's something that we don't see with most other viral illnesses. We think that has something to do with an invasion of the central nervous system and the dampening of the taste and smell sensation ability. The three that I mentioned, the shortness of breath, the cough, and the low oxygen, those are just things that mean this disease is taking a turn for the worse. And you have to understand the course of the disease. The disease begins relatively mildly for most people. It begins with maybe a little fever, maybe stuffy nose, not unlike an upper respiratory infection, the common cold, or even a mild form of the flu. But somewhere around day 5 or day 7, if you're going to get a severe turn of the disease, that's when the disease takes off like gangbusters. So that's when you have to be particularly wary of these three findings.
We've got time for one more of your talking points, and
okay,
I'm going to go with the top 10 ways to protect yourself from COVID.
Okay, so basically, before we had vaccines, we have the mask, we have social distancing, we have wash your hands, and we have those three products that I mentioned, vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc. There are other potential products that are sort of floating around in the general literature. Pepsid, which is a medicine that we take for GI upset. There is melatonin, which is a product that is used for sleep. All those are purported to have some effect on the severity of the disease, but we really don't know at this point. You really have to do controlled clinical trials in order to test them, and we've been fooled too many times to just take these things haphazardly.
So the masks do work. People are highly recommended to keep wearing their masks for a while.
Not only the masks do work, but if you put a second mask on top of the first mask, you improve your protection from 60 to 90%.
Wow.
So double masking, if you're in that particularly susceptible group, the older person, the person with comorbidities, then you are protecting yourself. Now, there's also transportation, public transportation. We talked about that. Public gatherings. This is a disease that's transmitted by particles that one generates when one talks and when one breathes, one sneezes, or when one coughs. And if you are in the presence of somebody who has early disease, who doesn't even know that they're sick, then you, even if they're close acquaintances of yours, you are at risk of developing the disease. Bars, where you have to talk loud in order to be heard, are another site where you can easily catch COVID.
Well, Doctor, we do have to wrap this up. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Do you have a website that you want to give out where people can check you out and check out your book?
Absolutely. The Good Doctor 1 with the it's spelled just one word, Good Doctor, and 1 is the numeral 1 It's there to have updates on what's new in the COVID blogosphere, and you can also the book as it currently is available is an ebook, so you can get it directly on Amazon, and it will be available later this year as a hard copy version of the book. So look out for that. It's always good to have it on your bedside to be able to consult when you need it.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing and enlightening us about some facts on COVID that maybe people are not aware of. Best of luck with everything and your book as well.
And thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Love coffee, huh? But wait a minute. It seems like every time you finish a cup of coffee, you get all of these side effects along with it. Heartburn, digestion, upset stomach, acid reflux. As the world's first and only organic acid-free coffee, Tyler's Coffee is able to provide a healthier option in the solution for more than 100 million individuals who have sensitive stomachs or suffer from acid-related modalities. This is Tyler's acid-free coffee. Coffee without the consequences.
Hi, this is John Morgan, Production Supervisor for DJC Productions. You're listening to The Douglas Coleman Show.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Liz Butcher. Hi, Liz. How are you?
Good. How are you?
You do pronounce it Butcher, not Boucher?
Yeah, no, Butcher.
Okay. Well, I think if it's a Boucher, then there'd be no T, right?
Probably. I'm not too sure.
That would be French spelling. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you are in Australia. You're an author and a repeat guest, as we were just talking about.
Yeah.
So you're back to promote a new book called Never Never, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. Comes out on the 9th of April.
9th of April. Okay, great. Well, why don't you just tell us a little about the book?
Yeah, so it's a sort of modern fairy tale retelling of Peter Pan, where we've got Wendy Darling. For those who don't remember, she was a girl in Peter Pan, and she's now an adult, haunted by her childhood abduction by a mysterious creature that she recalls only as Pan. She's now a detective, and as her mother passes away, a teenage girl goes missing from her bedroom in the middle of the night, very much like how she did when she was young, and starts triggering all these memories, and she gets assigned to the case and is fairly certain that Pan's back, and yeah, sort of goes from there without giving too much away. Well,
okay, it's always difficult to talk about a book and not give anything away, because otherwise we're not going to cover too much. But you said, how related is this to Peter Pan?
It's got all the original characters, but they're all grown up now. So it's got Wendy and her two brothers, Michael and John, and we've got Hook and Pan and Smee. So there'll be a lot of familiar names in there for those that are familiar with the story, but it's also very far removed in that it's not a nice little Disney classic. It's a horror / crime / paranormal thriller. So yeah, quite different to the original.
Okay, so Peter Pan was a boy in the original story, and he's grown up now?
Yes and no. In my version, he's kind of more like an ageless entity, so to speak. So he is very asexual, very youthful in appearance, but centuries old.
Oh, I see. So he's more, okay, he's more of a fantasy character than a real boy. Yeah. And I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen that, but there was the little fairy.
Tinkerbell.
Tinkerbell. That's the one.
Yeah.
Is Tinkerbell in your book?
Yes and no. Not so much that like a little green fairy. She is more the byproduct of a drug that Pan puts in the water that causes his victims to see kind of green flashes and things like that. So it's more like a hallucination rather than a physical fairy.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, there's been many adaptations of Peter Pan. I know the original author was J.M. Barrie, and that was written in the late 1800s, early 1900s, something like that?
Yeah.
Right, and kind of in the Victorian era?
That's right.
Okay. I don't remember, and then Disney did a version of it, and then there was the original Disney version. When was that done? Like in the 50s?
Oh, yeah, it would have been. Went back when they did Snow White and Cinderella, like the original Disney movies. 1950s, I would think.
Okay, and then there was one called Hook.
Yes, there was with
Johnny
Robin
Depp.
Williams.
Oh, Robin Williams. Which one's the one with Johnny Depp, I'm thinking?
Finding Neverland.
Okay. All right. So there's another one.
Yeah, that was the one where he actually played Barry.
And then there was several Broadway versions. I know that Sandy Duncan played Peter Pan on Broadway.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know that.
So how's things in Australia? You guys finally getting back to normal? Is the COVID going away?
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky, knock on wood. The state that I'm in, we sort of had the original sort of 8-week lockdown last year, and then since then we've only had sort of the odd 3 or 4 day lockdown when cases have cropped up. So we've been pretty lucky. I know that down south they've had quite a few long-term lockdowns, which has been difficult for them. But overall, we're not doing too badly. I know that my brother's actually in London, and I know that they're really struggling over there with endless lockdowns. So definitely grateful that we haven't been in that position. So hopefully it improves elsewhere as well.
Are you still under any kind of restrictions like mask mandates or limited seating at restaurants and things like that?
We have the limited seating. Masks are only mandatory when there's new cases. So at the moment we don't have to wear masks. But limited seating, we have to check in whenever we go somewhere. So on your phone you've got to prove that you've checked in. So for what are they called? Contact tracing, so that if there is a case, they know exactly who's been there and when you were there. But that's really it. Just limited numbers in places and checking in.
Have you been vaccinated?
Not yet. We're not eligible yet. So they have rolled it out, but it's only been for the elderly and frontline workers. So your nurses, doctors, people like that. Not sure when it becomes available for us. I think probably in the next couple of months, I would think. But not available yet.
Which vaccine are you guys getting? Which companies?
Not too sure, to be honest. I think there's been a couple. I'm honestly not too sure which one we're getting. I think everyone's just too keen to get it. So I'm not real sure exactly which company's supplying ours.
I'm just curious because there's 3 now. There's Moderna, there's Johnson & Johnson was the new one, and then there's the one from the UK, and I can't remember the name of it. Can't remember the name of the company, but
not sure which one we're getting.
Well, anything else you want to cover? Do you have a website you want to give out?
Yeah, I do. It's www.lizbutcher.com.au. So you can just follow me on there, and I'll put updates as they come through.
.com.au?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. You got any other books coming out shortly, or is this it for a while?
This will probably be it for this year at this stage, and maybe release. I've got a series that I'm starting, so maybe if I'm organised enough, I might have that out later this year, but not making any promises just yet.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on. Actually, thanks for getting up early, too. I know it's, 6 o'clock in the morning there or something now?
Yeah, it is, bright and early.
Okay. So I appreciate you getting up. Best of luck with everything.
Thank
Best of luck
you
with
so
your new book.
much.